I've been asked so many times, how is it possible that I stay that committed to my ketogenic? Well, where do I get the willpower to be this committed to living the way that I do? I've done 1,000+ days without touching any processed sugar. And in thinking about it, what I figured out is that there are three main things that I've learned in the course of my 1,000 days that I want to share with you that I think is going to really change your perspective on living low carb. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, so there's a fourth one. So stay tuned to the end of the video because there's actually a fourth one that I actually just thought about 5 seconds ago that keeps me on track. So first of all, I guess I should tell you why I quit sugar and what quitting sugar meant for me. And here's the big surprise. I did not quit sugar to lose weight. Even though I had weight to lose. I quit sugar because my hip was killing me and I was having a bunch of pain. I couldn't walk upstairs. I couldn't step up on a curb. I couldn't sit in a chair for more than 40, 50 minutes at a time without being in excruciating pain. And in fact, to do my job, my sessions are 50 minutes. This meant that I couldn't have 2 sessions in a row or I wouldn't be able to get through it. So all of this problem started in 2017. And with my job on the line and my sports on the line, because if you're just meeting me right now, you don't know that I love to ride my bike, ride my longboard and skateboard, scooter. So not an electric scooter, a kick scooter. Although I am building an electric scooter this summer, but that's a whole other story. I do a lot of activities. And in the winter, I snowboard, I ski, I ice skate. So I just love being outside. I love doing stuff. We go for walks all the time. All of a sudden, everything that makes Violet happy was being taken away. Not only that, but my ability to work and make money to take care of my daughter was being taken away. This was super scary for me. Something that's not known about me is because I don't talk about it much, is that I am really not a fan. And as a matter of fact, I have to say even more strongly than not a fan, I'm afraid of any kind of operation. And I really don't know what I would do if I was put in a position of you need this operation or it's the end of you. Add to that, I hate taking medication. And I've had a history of taking things, so being prescribed things when I was much younger by doctors who saw a symptom and said, hey, this is the answer without really investigating what was going on with me. And then I was given medication that was absolutely the wrong thing for someone with thalassemia, which I have, to take. And I only found it out much later in life that I had thalassemia. And I only found out much later in life that that medication that I was given, iron pills, could have actually ended my life. And you can imagine how that now makes me very conditioned to be skeptical and even afraid of taking anything. All that to say, if I have a headache, I'd rather go to sleep and lose a day than take medication to make my headache go away. So I embarked on a journey to figure out how to solve this naturally. And in my mind, the first thing that I figured is contributing to this was I was overweight. So clearly, lose weight, chances are the pressure on your hip is going to go away. Yay, get on with life. So how do we lose weight, right? Obviously, I changed my meal plan and I made it very healthy, low fat. I changed my daily routine and I inserted, because I couldn't do any sports, I inserted walking every morning into my routine. Eventually, I added walking at lunchtime whenever was possible. You'll understand why in a second. And my focus was on, let's just do all the healthy things. No more snacking, all the junk food, all that cut out. Let's do the healthy things, lose some weight. 6 months later, I had not lost any weight. I had gotten some relief from the walking, which was interesting, because what I learned from that process was that somehow walking was allowing me to go maybe 2-ish hours, 3-ish hours without having pain while I sat, which was my number one goal because I wanted to make sure I could work. So if I could go 3 hours without well, if I could go a whole day sitting without being in pain, that would have been a win for me. Unfortunately, I was able to get it only down to 3 hours, which is why I added walking at lunch so that I could get another 3 hours in the afternoon. But typically I have 8 clients per day. So I actually had to cut down my workday in order for this to work for me, which wasn't great. Now, I'm going to share with you that my spouse was really not happy with me because Pat was wanting me to see a dietitian or a nutritionist of some kind and really like look into what should I be eating and etc. But you know, what's funny about this story is that I pretty much knew what the dietitian was going to tell me. Do low fat, don't eat junk, and exercise more. So I resisted that just because I didn't want to waste the money to have someone tell me what I already knew I should be doing. But then, of course, we're fighting because I hadn't actually lost any weight. So interesting. Now, I was really, really sure that if I went to see a doctor for this problem, they were going to either put me on medication, which I wasn't happy with, or maybe even tell me I needed an operation of some kind, which I wasn't happy with. So I didn't lose any weight, but I gained an ability to sit for a longer period of time. And that really got me thinking that there's something happening within my hip because walking somehow was making it feel better. So I decided to do some research and found out that likely what I had was inflammation. And then I did some more research because I wanted to find out, well, what causes inflammation, and learned that inflammation is caused by carbohydrates. So eating sugar. That took me a month and a half to truly believe. I did research from the date that I first read that piece of information until I actually allowed myself to believe that this was the answer. It took me a month and a half of reading articles, watching videos, listening to doctors, before I actually accepted that, oh my goodness, sugar causes inflammation. And there is documentation for this. Now, so getting past that first mind-blowing piece of information led me to, and hence the name of this video series, by the way, that led me to, how do I take sugar out of my life to the extent that they're saying I need to? And that's when I found the ketogenic diet. So on April 20th, 2018, I went from eating standard Caribbean diet, living in Canada with what's available to me, a lot of rice, lots of vegetables, reasonable amount of meat, to living a ketogenic lifestyle. So 300-ish grams of carbs per day down to 20 or less. And that was difficult. And the first few days was like, woo. Actually, what I should say is the first 2 days were fine. Day 3 and 4 were like really bad. And then day 5 and going forward were fine. I had 2 really hard days where I just wanted to eat more. I felt hungry all the time. That those 2 days, I just felt hungry all day, despite the fact that I was eating. And I was eating a large amount of food, actually. And I couldn't seem to feel satiated. And I was worried that this was not going to work. But I had it in my head that this is going to solve my hip problem. So I just pushed through those 2 days. Now, eventually I get to day 5. Things start to feel better. I actually do a little research, find out that I went through keto flu. I'll come back to that idea in a minute. And I go for it and everything is fine. And I live eating this way for the next month and about 2 weeks. And what's very interesting is that a month and 2 weeks later, for some reason, my spouse, so Pat, asked me, how's your hip? And I had forgotten that my hip had been hurting me. A month and a half into living this way, the pain was gone. And I was shocked. And he asked me that, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, sure, yeah. Oh, I feels fine. On top of that, I started to realize, you know what? My back actually feels better, and my neck is good. And actually, now I think about it, my elbow and every joint on my body was just feeling fine. Pains that I had been living with since I was 22 years old just weren't there anymore. So you can imagine I was like a little bit shocked, actually. And, but I mean, happily shocked about that. Now, fast forward to the 5 month mark. I had lost 70 pounds. Just continuing to eat this way, not necessarily focused on it, but noticing that it was happening. And I can't lie, I was happy about it because it was never part of my plan. I really, by the time that I did 6 months of walking and low fat and all this, I was so sure that, yeah, like, years ago I had accepted this is what I weigh. But at that point I was really like, okay, there's no changing this at all. So living this lifestyle, when the weight started to come off, it was just kind of like, wow, like everything that I read about living this lifestyle is actually playing itself out, and I'm getting positives here. And that was amazing to me. And so this brings us to the 4 things that I want to share with you about what I figured out about eating low carb, eating ketogenic lifestyle. The first one being, I was addicted to carbohydrates, sugar. And you cannot imagine how that was a devastating realization that I was addicted to something. And I was addicted to something and didn't know. And I mean, I've made jokes before in the past about, oh, I'm a chocoholic, ha ha ha. And I was joking because, sure, I saw that I liked chocolate, but I never really put it to the point of saying that I was addicted to it, because I would go large amounts of time without eating it. But now I realize I could go large amounts of time without eating it because I would just eat other sugary, carby things. And the basic simple example was every single day I had pasta or rice for supper or French fries. I always had high carb meals. That was really disappointing to figure out. I lived my entire life with knowledge. I was very moderate with alcohol, and I've never touched a drug. Never picked up smoking. So to be addicted to something, and to be addicted to something and not know until I lived withdrawal symptoms, and then, looked them up and been like, wow, those were withdrawal symptoms that I had. Again, devastating to me. And it took me a little while to get over that piece of the puzzle. And I think that for most people, part of the reason that we get stuck, even after we know what we need to do to manage our weight, is because we have a hard time accepting that part of the puzzle, that I'm actually addicted to carbohydrates and need to treat it like the toxic substance that it is. So that was the first thing that I learned on my ketogenic lifestyle. The second thing that I learned was that sugar was actually what was causing my weight gain. Like all those years, all the different times that I tried to be moderate with my food consumption and tried to solve my weight issues, although I wasn't a big fan of dieting, but I was a huge fan of getting the junk out of my life and eating healthy and properly and low fat meals, even if it was not a diet that I was doing. And not ever realizing that those low-fat dressings had sugar in them, that keeping the rice, the potatoes, the carrots, the pasta, the bread, all these things on my plate was actually what was causing me to be overweight. That was so frustrating to learn because it's information that's known. Carbohydrates get converted into fat in the body. It's known. Yet, we act like we don't know. Well, it's known to doctors. The average everyday person doesn't know that information, right? So being an average everyday person, I didn't know that information. I'm so sorry to all the people who came to me and one of the topics was their weight. And I encouraged them to do low fat, be more on your exercise, eat properly, low fat properly. I'm so sorry to you because, and don't think I was telling you that because I was doing the same. I was giving you the information that I had learned. And honestly, I realize now that it was bad information. When we know something, we can act on it. So that was the second thing that I learned, is that the carbohydrates were actually what was causing my weight gain, and that my weight gain would continue unless I made a conscious effort to get my carbohydrate intake under control. The other thing I want to point out here is that first 5 months of living a ketogenic lifestyle, there wasn't very many days where I was under 2,000 calories in terms of what I was eating while my weight was coming down. But I was never above 20 grams of carb, right? I was eating multiple times a day, and I was eating healthy, low carb meals. I was eating meat, and I was eating the fat that came along with the meat. My calorie count was actually 2,000-ish most of the days, and still I lost weight. So the idea that it's carbs rather than calories, again, mind blown. The third thing that I learned that is just pushing me and keeps me on track when it comes to living this lifestyle every day, why Violet doesn't waver. The third thing that I learned was that eating high carb foods actually causes metabolic syndrome, causes heart disease, causes cognitive impairment and dysfunction, so problems in our brain. That eating high carb causes internal damage that we only see when there's a problem. And this one was tricky because if I eat a toxic substance, like if I'm allergic to peanuts, most people have the same anaphylactic shock reaction to eating peanuts and the same rash or what, like when you typically have a allergic reaction, everybody has the same allergic reaction. When it's sugar, what's really hard is that what my body decides to do with the sugar can differ and does differ from what other people's body decides to do with the sugar. However, they kind of fall into these certain categories and buckets, right? So my body went inflammation. There's other people's body who goes increased weight. There's other people's body that goes heart problems. There's other people's bodies that goes brain problems. There's other people that get PCOS. Like the possibility of what your body does with sugar, because there's so many things that our body can do with sugar, means that there's so many different outlets that we, for some reason, are not allowing ourselves to see that the origin is still the same. Now, interestingly enough, there are many doctors and researchers who've made the link, who are talking about the link. But the rest of us, so us regular people, somehow we're not getting that information. For the reason that I've decided to make these videos, I want us regular people to know what actually causes this problem that we are living, where, okay, eventually a lot of us get to the increased weight, but on our path to the increased weight, or if we didn't start at increased weight, there's so many other negative internal liver damage. There's so many other negative internal things happening that we only know when a medication is introduced or an operation is necessary, because we're at the point where our body just can't manage anymore. Because guys, wellness warriors, the thing that I keep telling you over and over is that our body is made to survive, right? And so it will survive until it can't anymore. And that helped me to understand that my struggle with sugar actually started back when my inflammation started. So you're going back to when I was in my early 20s. But then I think about it and I go, well, you know what? The truth is my struggle with sugar showed itself then. But in truth, my struggle started as soon as I started to eat solid food. Because my parents, being from the Caribbean, we have rice a lot of days for supper. And my parents living in North America, we're not having rice, we're having pasta, we're having potatoes and carrots and all of these healthy vegetables and healthy foods that aren't really so healthy. And it's normal, because I turned around being a parent and fed my daughter exactly the same way. And, part of the problem is that from the date that I was a kid and my daughter has been a kid, we've had access to processed carbohydrates as well. And processed carbohydrates on top of these other high carb carbohydrates that we eat for meals, it's just a recipe for disaster, right? And that just goes to show you how much your body can actually handle before it falls apart. Because our grandparents and our great-grandparents and our great-great-grandparents did not have the levels of metabolic issues. So when you look at the percentages in the world, they weren't as high as they are today. And what changed? Processed foods got introduced. And we were encouraged to do low fat. And those two things combined together, bang, right? I wish I knew this earlier, because my daughter would be in such a better situation, because I would have definitely fed her differently. I would have followed her natural inclination. She hated sweet things up until the age of 6. And the only reason she even learned to like them was my mistake of I kept offering her this garbage, not knowing what I was doing. So after 1,000+ days of living this way, Wellness Warriors, the last tip that I can give you that really helps me to stay on track is understanding that this ketogenic lifestyle that I'm living, that I figured out, is solved my inflammation issue, solved my weight issue, very likely solved other internal things that were going to show themselves. This ketogenic lifestyle that I'm living is about living it. Knowing the information and not applying it doesn't help me. If I'm going to have the information, I need to use it. I need to walk the walk. The reason that I'm so committed to my keto lifestyle is because living the keto lifestyle keeps me feeling healthy. They feed each other. The more I do it, the more I want to do it, because the more good I do it, the better I feel. And if you would like to understand how I got started on this process, there's a video on the screen right now that's going to help you to take the steps you need to take to start your journey or to maintain your journey. Thanks for watching, Wellness Warriors. I love making these videos for you guys, and I cannot wait to talk to you in the next video.